All right, so we are in a series called Eastertide. This is the time of year from Resurrection Sunday on Easter all the way to Pentecost. It's a period of 50 days in the life of the church celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. And so 2 weeks ago, we celebrated with water baptisms. How many of you were here for our water baptism Sunday? Crazy awesome day, yeah? We had a bunch of people get baptized. And we looked at Jesus' words to the 11 disciples to go to disciple nations. Now, last week we went off-roading a little bit from the sermon calendar, and we talked about Jesus and Peter walking on the water. And so today we're jumping back into the series with appearances of the risen Jesus. And today I want to tell you a story of the risen Jesus appearing to Peter on the sea, on the beach. Now, this is a story that's really, really important, and it has all the great stuff. What happens, if I could recap Peter's story to you briefly here this morning. Peter is, for those of you who don't know, basically Jesus' top dog, right? He's the right-hand guy. Jesus calls 12 disciples to follow him. And Peter's kind of like the top of those 12. You know, there were times where Jesus would only take Peter, James, and John with him into a special moment. There were times when Peter, the most vocal and outspoken, would say something that was right on. He was the first to acknowledge that Jesus was the Messiah. So check that out. And then about 5 minutes later, he tried to rebuke Jesus. Turns out that never works out so well. Don't recommend it. Gets called Satan. That's not fun. And so Peter's kind of the guy who's like, he's gung-ho. He jumps into everything. Sometimes gets it right. Sometimes gets it wrong. But you never have to worry what Peter's thinking because he's already told you, right? Anybody like that out there? Come on, all the Peters in the house. I bless you right now. We're thankful for the Peters in our lives. You know, where would we be without them? So Peter here, he's the most vocal. And when you trace kind of the course of Jesus' ministry, the disciples, they're eager, they're excited. Jesus, he's the Messiah. He's going to redeem all of us. And yet Jesus kind of makes these statements about going to the cross and dying. And if you want to be my disciple, I want you to take up your cross too. And you can tell over the course of time that the 12, they don't understand it. They didn't conceptualize a Messiah who would die. And so you can feel the heaviness on the disciples who are trying to follow this teacher, but they never understand what he's saying. Jesus tells a parable. Afterward, they're like, hey, Jesus, great word there. What does any of that mean? And Jesus has to go back afterward and interpret the parables. Over and over again, Jesus is like, you have hard hearts. Where are your ears? Where are your eyes? Don't you get it? The disciples are fighting with each other. They don't understand what it means to take up their crosses. And so we build towards this moment, the final night before Jesus goes to the cross, and he says, you will all fall away because of me. And Peter, what does he say, right? The first one to speak up, Lord, even if they all deny you, I'll follow you to the end, right? Classic Peter, right? Forget them, Jesus. You got me right here. Oh, yeah, Jesus, we know the 11, right? But me and you, we're going to go through to the end. And Jesus is like, Peter, before the night's over, you're going to deny you even know me. And that's what happens. Jesus is arrested in the garden, and it says all of his disciples fled. It says in Mark that they fled so fast that there was one young man who the guards grabbed his cloak and he fled naked to run away. That's a bad day. You've had dreams of going to school without your pants on, but you never had to flee in a garden when someone was trying to kill you naked, right? I mean, that's a bad day. Peter follows at a distance And that's his first problem, right? That at some point he decided that following at a distance was okay. He follows at a distance into the courtyard where Jesus is on trial, and he's outside a bit, and they begin talking. Some of the servants in the courtyard, and hey, wait a minute, who are you? Didn't I recognize you in the garden? Denies that he even knows him. So I want to pick up the story here in John 21, because the risen Jesus has a score to settle here. Yeah? The risen Jesus is about to put some stuff right. So verse 1 through 8, we're going to read here in the beginning. It says, after this, Jesus revealed himself again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. This is the same Sea of Galilee. It says he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael from Cana of Galilee, Zebedee's sons, and 2 others of his disciples were together. I'm going fishing, Simon Peter said to them. We're coming with you, they told him. And they went out, got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. When daybreak came, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Friends, Jesus called to them, you don't have any fish, do you? No, they answered. Cast the net on the right side of the boat, he told them, and you'll find some. So they did, and they were unable to haul it in because of the large number of fish. And the disciple, the one Jesus loved, said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he tied his outer clothing around him, for he had taken it off, and plunged into the sea, since they were not far from land, about 100 yards. And the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish. Okay, so there's a lot here. But the first thing that I want you to see is that this is the first time that Jesus is going to begin to address what happened that night with Peter. Now, he's already seen him a couple times before. Thomas was doubting, all kinds of stuff. But here, Jesus is going to begin to address what happened that night. Because some of you remember, Peter used to be a fisherman before Jesus called him, right? In fact, some of you even know that when Jesus first called Peter, it was a story very similar to this on the very same sea. You can read about it in Luke 5. They had fished all night. They had caught nothing. And Jesus said, cast your net on the right side of the boat. And that doesn't make sense to anyone because these guys are professional fishermen. I'm sure they tried every side of the boat. They cast their net. It's full of fish. And Jesus says, from now on, you're going to be catching people. Follow me. And Peter follows him. And so you see the first thing that I want you to notice here in this story is that what Jesus does before they begin a conversation, before they address that night, he's bringing Peter back to the place where he first called him. He's bringing Peter back to the place where he first called his name. And you see, on the surface, everything's nice and wonderful. The sun is shining. They're on the sea. We're going to read in a minute. They have breakfast and even a long walk on the beach. It's a great story. It's all here. But you see, the thing is, even though externally everything's nice, we're in the water, we're on the sea, you can tell that for Peter, the darkness of that night is still haunting him. That the darkness of that night in the garden, the darkness of that night in the courtyard, it still haunts him. And he's gone back to the very thing that Jesus called him out of. But you see, the beauty of this story is that it's a reminder that failure is not the end of your story. Failure is not the end. That this man, Peter, did maybe one of the worst possible sins. Not just like had a bad moment. Not just, no, I'm not following him. Denied that he ever even knew him. And yet see the grace, see the mercy, see the love that when Peter did the unimaginable, when Peter did the thing that he wasn't supposed to do, the thing that he said he wouldn't do, look at the heart of Christ. What does he do but show up again and call him again? You see, some of you would say externally things look okay, but you're being haunted by things in your past. You're being haunted by decisions that you made, and you know deep down you haven't been following Jesus the way that he called you to. And I want you to know today, he's calling you again. He's inviting you again. And I want you to know you're not here in the room today because someone invited you. You're not here in the room today because someone invited you for Mother's Day, or you've been coming the last few weeks because a relative or neighbor invited you. I believe today from the bottom of my heart that you're in the room today because Jesus is calling you again today. He's inviting you again today. He's welcoming you again today. Some of you feel haunted by what has happened in your life. And some of you have begun to feel that maybe, just maybe, your best days with Jesus were in the past. And I want to tell somebody today that is not the case. I want to tell someone today the best days of your story with Jesus are still to come. And some of you would say, Joey, but I saw the miracles and I saw what he did and I know what he called me out of and I still went back to it. And I want you to know today, Peter, if only you could see, if only you could lift your eyes, there's a whole life of following Jesus still ahead of you. It's not the end. You see, your failure does not invalidate the call. Hear this, church. See, Peter was surprised that he failed, wasn't he? But guess what? Jesus wasn't surprised that he failed. In fact, let me tell you something crazy. Jesus not only knew about it, he told Peter about it, and guess what? He still called him anyway. See the grace, see the mercy, see the love that this guy, Peter, one day he's going to deny that he even knows me. And guess what? He still called Peter's name. And I know you're surprised by where you're at today, but Jesus is not surprised. He saw it in advance and he called you anyway. He called you anyway. It says here in verse 9, when they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish lying on it. Jesus already had the fish and bread. Bring some of the fish you've just caught, Jesus told them. So Simon Peter climbed up, hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. Even though there were so many, the net was not torn. Come and have breakfast, Jesus told them. Hallelujah. None of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew that it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them. And he did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. See, here's what I want you to see. These guys, they go back fishing. They go back to the thing that he called them out of. And yet what we see in this story is that by the time they get to the shore, Jesus already had a few fish going on the fire. You see, they went fishing, but it turns out Jesus also came to do some fishing that day. He came and he told Peter in the beginning, you're going to be a fisher of men. You're going to start fishing for people. But you see, it turns out that Jesus is the great fisher of men. Jesus is the great fisher of people. And when he went and called Peter the first time, he was fishing for Peter. And even though Peter ran away, he throws out the net again and starts fishing for Peter again. And I want you to know today, Jesus has been fishing for you. He's been looking for you. Jesus said in Matthew 13, the kingdom of heaven is like a great net that's thrown into the sea, and it pulls up every kind of fish. Did you know Jesus was fishing for you today? Did you know Jesus was calling you today? Did you know Jesus was chasing you today? And you see, we like to think in our pride that we're too far gone for Jesus, that we're too wicked, that we're too sinful, that we've made too many mistakes, that we've crossed too many lines. And some of you have heard me say this before. Even though you and I are good at running, Jesus is better at chasing. You're fast, but he's faster. And if I'm going to stay on metaphor here, he's better at fishing than you are at swimming away. And we're good at swimming away, aren't we? Just keep swimming, Dory. Story of my life without Jesus, swimming away. And yet I'm here today because every time I swam away, the great fisherman of heaven pulled me back in his love and pulled me back in his grace. And Jesus is fishing for some people today. He's calling some people today. You know, here's what I believe about Jesus. I believe that even though you and I love sin, he likes forgiving more than we like sinning. And you'll never get to a point in your life where you like sinning more than he likes forgiving sins. Yeah, but Joey, you don't know what I did in my past. You don't know what I did a few weeks ago. You don't know what I did last night. Maybe I don't. But I can tell you Jesus knew, and he still called you. See, not only does Jesus in this story bring Peter back to the place he first called him, it says that at the beach, Jesus had a charcoal fire. And I didn't have time to read it to you, but if you read where Peter denied Jesus, guess where he was in the courtyard? Around a charcoal fire. So number one, he brings Peter back to the place he found him. And then number two, he brings him back to the place where he denied him. Now listen, if I'm Jesus here, Peter's in for a lecture, and it's not a happy one. It's not an info meeting. I'm going to shred this guy. Full stop, no question. And look what Jesus does. He makes him breakfast. The greatest command in the Bible. Come and have breakfast. Hallelujah. I feel the Lord on that right now. Think about this for a minute. Think about this. This is Jesus of Nazareth, pre-existed as the eternal Son of God. In the beginning was the Word, yeah? Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him is life. That life is the light of men. We beheld his glory, the glory of the only one from the Father, full of grace and truth. This is Jesus, the eternal Son, the uncreated Son of God. In his ministry, lives a sinless life. Takes the weight of the world onto his shoulders, dies a brutal death on the cross, rises again, victorious over sin, Satan, and the grave, and is making breakfast. Think about this. 5 minutes ago, just conquered death. Hey, Peter, here's some pancakes. The triumphant Lord of heaven and earth. Every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess. And I got to talk to some guy who denied me. How should I start? Maybe I'll make him breakfast. You see, this is the Jesus that we serve, that we deny him and he feeds us. We reject him and he serves us. We push him away and he calls us again and again and again. And I got a feeling there's some people in this room who feel like they're too far gone. And I want to tell you today, Jesus is about to serve you at his table this morning. Do you see the extravagant grace, the extravagant love that Peter should be making him breakfast? It's funny when you read the Gospels, Jesus had meals all the time. To the point where the Pharisees and John the Baptist's disciples had to call him out and say, look, how come we're always fasting and you and your disciples are always eating. In fact, they began to drag Jesus' name through the mud by saying he was a drunk and a glutton. Now, we know, of course, he wasn't, but they had to give a lie that had enough truth to it because we all know he's eating all the time while we're fasting. Here's what I want you to see. Peter denies he even knows him 3 times. And before we're going to get down to business, Peter, come to the table. You see, at the table, fellowship is restored. At the table, relationship is restored. And here's what I want you to know. Right now this morning, God doesn't want your promises because you'll break them again, Peter. He doesn't need your program for how you're going to be different this time. He doesn't need you to, oh, don't worry, I'm going to get it right. He just wants you to come to the table. He just wants you to come into his presence. He just wants you to come into his love. It's not about all the, oh, I'm going to get it right, and I promise I'll be different. Just come to the table, Peter. I just want to be with you, Peter. I just want a relationship with you, Peter. You see, more than he wants you to do a bunch of stuff for his kingdom, he just wants your presence. He just wants to connect with you in relationship. And so you see, time with Jesus. And I said a similar thing last week. Time with Jesus, it's not a chore, it's a meal. Listen, me spending time with Jesus on a daily basis is not because I'm trying to check all the boxes. It's because, like Peter, I need to come to the table again and again and again because I come hungry, I come empty, I come thirsty, and I have found time and time again in my life that I come wicked, broken, empty, dysfunctional, and there's never been a lack of food on his table. I've never once found that table empty. I've never found that cup to run dry. And so again and again, he's saying, come on to the table. Let me nourish you with my presence. Let me nourish you with my love. Yeah, but Jesus, about that night, don't worry about that night, Peter. Come to the table. Now listen, we'll get to that in a minute, Peter, but just for a minute here, come into my presence. He calls him to the table. It says in verse 15, when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said to him, you know that I love you. Feed my lambs, he told him. A second time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, he said to him, you know that I love you. Shepherd my sheep, he told him. He asked him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved that he asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Feed my sheep, Jesus said. Truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you would tie your belt and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will tie you and carry you where you don't want to go. He said this to indicate by what kind of death Peter would glorify God. After saying this, he told him, follow me. He said, do you love me? And I want to tell you this morning, it's easy in the church. That pastors are really good at using fear and shame and guilt and condemnation. But I want to tell you, those are illegitimate motivators for following Jesus. Fear will only carry you so far. Shame will only carry you so far. Willpower will only carry you so far. Trying hard will only carry you so far. But if you have a love for this man, that love will carry you through the decades of life. It will carry you through the failures that you make. It will carry you through the opposition that tries to come against you. It's love. And before Peter, we call you to ministry. I want you to remember your love. Remember that you love him. St. Augustine said, all sin is the result of disordered loves. And man, I love that. You see, because at the end of the day, it's not that we have a sin problem or a try harder problem or an information problem. We have a love problem. And when you love him more than anything, it doesn't matter who's across that fire saying, oh, are you one of his? It doesn't matter what sin you've committed. It doesn't matter the opposition that comes against you. It doesn't matter what comforts of this life try to seduce you away from the word. There's a love for him that will carry you through all the way to the end. And for Peter, that love not only launched him into decades of following Jesus and decades of ministry, it led him to a death that Jesus talked about. That, you know, Peter, when you're young, you can get dressed, put your belt on, put your shoes on, go wherever you want. But when you get old, someone's going to tie you up. They're going to take you where you don't want to go. And you will glorify God through it. Now listen, it's not in Scripture. But church tradition teaches us that this came true. That Peter not only had decades of faithful gospel ministry, but a day came when he was arrested for his faith, when he was arrested for his belief in Jesus. And in that day, there was no denial. In that day, there was no rejection. In that day, there was no pushing back. Why? Because of love. It was a love that carried him through a martyrdom. Not for a belief system, not for a doctrine, but for the one that he loved. And church tradition teaches us that as they were going to crucify him, Peter stopped them and said, no, I don't want to be killed in the same way as my Lord. So crucify me upside down. And they did. You see, life is heavy. Life is hard. And life has a way of making us pick up stuff. Fear, worry, anxiety, false loves that this world has to offer us. And I want to tell you this morning, what will carry you and sustain your walk with Jesus through it all, through every false god, through every idol, through every seduction of sin, there is a love for the person of Jesus that'll change everything. Do you love me? He says, Simon, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yeah, but Jesus, don't you know what I did that night? And it's hilarious. Jesus doesn't even bring it up. He doesn't even specifically mention that night. All he says is, do you love me? Yeah, but Jesus, don't you know, do you love me? Yeah, but Jesus, I've failed so many times. Do you love me? And some of you have been battling stuff again and again and again, and you're stuck in a cycle of sin, or you've done something that you can't get past. And this morning, the only question that matters, Peter, is do you love me? Yeah, but that night, do you love me? Yeah, but Jesus, I'm not the man that I want to be. Do you love me? Yeah, but Jesus, I should be further along by now. Do you love me? And you see, for however many times we sin, he's right there again, calling us back in love. Calling us back in love again and again and again, because our sin, somehow by the grace of God, has not negated the invitation to follow. And these are the final words of Jesus in John's gospel. Follow me. And then Peter says, well, what about this other disciple? Is he going to die too? And Jesus said, what I have for him is between me and him, but for you, you follow me. See, we want to know how everybody else's story ends, don't we? He says, don't worry about him, Peter. As for you, follow me. And the Gospel of John ends, the final words of Jesus, the final words of the risen Christ in the Gospel of John is a fresh invitation to a denier to follow again. And I want to say this here in closing. I believe this morning the risen Jesus is extending a hand today. I believe this morning the risen Jesus is inviting you to the table today. And I hear him saying so clearly in my spirit, follow me. Follow me. And in the midst of all of our sin, all of our weakness, all of our brokenness, all of our shame, he says, follow me, son. Follow me, daughter. And we come with all this stuff that we've done. And yet somehow the risen Jesus calls us today. That he comes fishing today. He comes looking today. He comes seeking today. It says in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus said the Son of Man came for this purpose, to seek and to save the lost. And the funny thing is, Peter had already been following Jesus for 3 years. But you see, we have a way of getting lost again, don't we? We have a way of losing ourselves again. And no matter how many times we fall, no matter how many times we lose ourselves, Jesus casts that net again. He casts that line again. And he pulls us in with his grace. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Right now this morning, I have a sense that across this room, there may be many of us who feel like, Jesus, I wonder if my best days with you are in the past. I wonder if my best times with you were in the past. And I want to tell someone this morning that your failure is not the end. That your failure does not get the final say over your story. The call of Jesus does. And he's calling you today. He's inviting you today. He's saying, follow me. Follow me. The best days of your life with me are still to come.